my ideal world, and like I'll kind of wake up and I'll be in this place that, everything is perfect, which I know is impossible and is never going to happen. But I don't know. That's when I'm like kind of stressed out and just like I don't even feel like I'm part of the world. I don't know if that makes sense.
You think when you go to sleep and wake up every day, would you say you feel like you're starting a new day, or do you feel like you're just continuing a stream of events?
Definitely a continuation. It's just kind of like one long flow.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Hmm. Um, I imagine what it's like to be dominant in I though. Like earlier, I said the sort of like I think that NI is sort of it views parts and it sort of views things as a unitary essence. So it might see certain phenomena, and you will have you'll conceive this idea of everything that's sort of unified, or something that's connected. It's unitary, where I think I would see NE as more as the linkage between the parts, whereas the NI sees the unitary essence behind the parts, right? Have
Hmm.
you think that correlates at all with
What,
your experience?
what was that last part?
Do you think that can you resonate with that at all with regarding your day-to-day experience, your quotidian exposure to phenomena within the world?
Um,
Do you think it's unitary or no?
yeah. I mean, could you possibly give an example?
Um, well, I imagine NI is sort of like NI. I imagine INFJ, because they have FE in second slot, they're using their FE to sort of get a feel for their environment, right? So they're rationalizing the information. So they're being exposed to behavior of an individual, for example. Like in a relationship, an INFJ partner might be exposed to behavior within their relationship, and like certain events, certain phenomena that their partner is doing, and then they're going to get an NI impression, a unitary conceived idea of, okay, this is the type of person this individual is. This is where their behavior is leading to. Like I can categorize that, and I have a conception about that. And then once they establish that, then they can see it played out within the manifested world. Is
Yeah,
that something?
yeah. I can definitely relate to that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like where INTJs, where they have T in the second slot, they're similar, but it's regarding uh, objective analysis about the world around them. So they look at data and factual analysis about things going on, and then they're able to receive an NI, a conceived idea of, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what is going to happen. This is what the current situation is. I have this. I would say NI is almost abstract, but it's fueled by information that exists in the manifested world.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I don't know. Is it like I don't know. I'm just trying to, I guess, reconcile like all the crap that I've read everywhere. Um, because I read somewhere NI has less trust of their senses. Is it just like, do you think it's more like, mm, you question everything you see because,
It's certainty.
what, I don't know.
It's certainty in one's intuition. NI is fundamentally more certain about its truths than NE is. NE has extreme certainty. Certainty in the face of contrary evidence.
Mm,
And here's the thing, it has good reason to. It's clinging on to obvious truths. Obvious truths that may be not obvious until you recognize them, right? In other words, it's the sort of really good song that you think, man, that song sounds so easy to write. It sounds so obvious. The melody sounds just so normal and right, and yet it's not boring. It's not unfamiliar. If you hit one of those kind of melodies, like "Call Me Maybe," right? It's a fucking great song. It's an amazing song. It's a brilliant piece of songwriting. The melody's outstanding. It's astonishingly good, and it sounds so simple and obvious. And when you listen to it, there's nothing simple or obvious about it at all, except in the NI way that is, like, you think its trick is not tricky at all. It's just like, sort of, I'm making firm statements, then I'm sort of qualifying it with maybe. Well, whoop-de fucking do. But when you mix all that shit together, all those little introverted intuition truths together, it just works, right? You got to have extroverted intuition to make sure it's not boring. Extroverted intuition is much less reliable, especially for creative endeavors. But it's absolutely necessary, or else shit's boring. Because extroverted intuition is the sense that makes the things different. So that's why it's less reliable. Difference not always good.
That's true.
Whereas true and right almost always are.
I don't know. I'm just trying to understand, I guess, how NI, like, that's just so foreign to me because I'm just like, okay, a cup is a cup. A cup is not some mystical. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think you have to understand NI. I think a good way to understand NI is through lyrics of songs and the way in which they bounce between sort of familiar tropes that are comfortable, but they're not exactly the same as they were before. They change a little bit, right? And the balancing of the different tropes against whereas you get something that's obviously constructed and complicated, trying to be fancy and smart sounding, like it just sounds horrible. It's just dumb, right? It just doesn't work. Like if you get that some really wordy, intellectual sounding stuff that's super clever, well, I mean, this is the risk I have to always run into. I'm always running up against this wall. I've had to learn to trust introverted intuition and write simple songs with simple lyrics and stuff like that. It's been a long time challenge for me. But when you manage to get a hang of accepting introverted intuition, even though you can't control it, that's the tricky part. Because as extroverted intuitor, I want to have my hands on everything. You can't have your hands on NI. You just got to let it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, Eric pontificates endlessly about shit. Sorry, I'm blabby.
I have a little thing I could read. It's about the Jungian cognitive function analysis of the ESFP. It talks about inferior NI. I could read a bit of that and see what you think of that. You want to do that or no?
You can read it if you want.
So it's all kind of it's kind of long, so I'll just kind of skim through things I think that sound interesting. So in terms of practical manifestations, inferior NI tends to lend itself to bizarre and unfounded suspicions of others, even close friends and family. So this is inferior NI. So this would be for you and probably my brother as well. He's an ESTP. Since all possible perceptual angles are now on the table, dominant SE must stay aware and responsive to his surroundings, even if it means taking on and connecting with most outlandish or improbable suggestions and possibilities regarding the intentions and motivations of other people around them. It's not entirely uncommon to see unfounded accusations, perceptions of disloyalty, delusions of grand significance, and occasionally even conspiracy theories pour out from the stressed ESFP as they become increasingly convinced they possess some sort of supernatural insight. As inferior NI takes over, an ESFP will feel compelled to peer into every nook and cranny of something they've missed, some secret interpretive value that will change the way they see everything around them. Unfortunately, it's typically done in a unrefined manner that tends to result in assumptions that may be implausible and paranoid at worst. Like all inferior functions, inferior NI is most commonly forced out by situations the dominant function finds itself unable to handle the problem. It tends to surface when ESFPs lose faith in their ability to adapt to and handle their surroundings, using their instinctive understanding of physical reality and literal surface impressions. Naturally distrustful of unspoken information, they may become convinced that the only solution involves some sort of nefarious plot to obscure the truth or the real significance from themselves or their loved ones. So I guess this means, like, if there's information presented to you that is unobservable or unspoken, you will become convinced that there's some sort of like mystical essence to it that people assume exists, but you don't. It's not empirically observable. Therefore, you become rather suspicious of it, right? Let's see. Because Occasionally, the self-awareness of subjective perceptual expectations provided by inferior NI will help grant the ESFP a more balanced impression of the world and a reasoned organizational hierarchy of the priorities, or of their priorities. It should help to produce a realization that sometimes there actually is some value in withholding judgment, in reconsidering the reliability of surface impressions, and even in looking for meaning that isn't directly suggested by the concrete information available. Would you say you trust, I guess where you're an SE Dom, you're probably more inclined to trust the obvious external impressions of things as opposed to some sort of like deeper essence, right? Because that earlier you said like, okay, I think a cup is just a cup, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think NI is more inclined to see the world as sort of NI is like an introverted perceiving function, so it's going to be primarily interested with its impressional conceptions of the outside world, because it's introverted perceiving, as opposed to your extroverted sensing, which looks out to the world of just like, okay, here's the information, this must be what it is. There can't be any implicit sort of like depth to it if it's not observable, if it's not readily translatable by my sensual expressions or sensual the way your senses, you're going to primarily rely on your senses because it's going to give you really concrete information that isn't going to be fallible, right? Whereas I think NI ultimately is more, it's going to assume there's some sort of, even if it might not always be there. So I think the inferior NI and an ESFP is going to manifest as sort of like, you might get vague suspicions of things, even though you can't really put your finger on it, and it probably like makes you upset if there isn't something that's readily available to you. Would you resonate with that?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm suspicious at all, really, of anything. Like, it's funny because
We're suspicious that there's anything deeper in depth to it.
What?
You're suspicious that a cup has any depth to it, other than being a cup.
True. I guess I never thought about it like that. I mean, I see a cup and I want to pick it up and drink.
Does it matter what's in the cup? Is that what it's like being ESFP? You see shit, you see drinks, and you're just like, I want to drink that.
Ooh, shiny! Now you're playing. No, I don't think that's it. But like I think things have purpose. I think everything kind of has its uses. I mean, they could be uses that weren't necessarily intended by whoever made the object, but I do think everything does have some type of use.
So if everything has utility, everything has a virtue.
If everything is utilitarian, does everything have a virtue?
If everything has utility, does everything have a virtue then? Because if everything has a purpose to it, or something, a utility to it, that it is required to accomplish, is that the standard we should hold things as good or bad to?
Can things be good or bad? They're just things.
Well, if you say like everything has utility, we can assume that they're utilized to achieve some sort of purpose. And in achieving that purpose, things are either going to be good or bad at it, right? If the utility of an eye is seeing the world in front of you, an eye is going to have bad virtue if it doesn't translate the world into existence.
So do we scold the eye then? Do we scold the eye? You are a bad, bad eye.
Exactly, we should.
Are you saying like if things don't work, we should blame the thing for not working? That doesn't make sense.
I'm asking you. You said that everything has utility. So does that imply that everything has a virtue to it then? Because if everything has utility, then things are going to be able to use it to achieve that utility, either good or bad, right?
Right.
So does that mean everything has virtue to it?
I suppose. Can you define virtue? I feel like every time I talk to, I feel like when I talk to ITs, I need you to find every single word you say.
Well, virtue would be it's what we identify as like good or bad. You know, it's moral weight. Morality,
I
not in
don't
the
think.
sense of gone.
Sorry, I don't think objects can be good or bad. I think people use things good or bad. I don't think objects are good or bad in themselves.
Can I ask a question? Do you think if I show you two knives, that one of them might be a better knife than another in some way beyond just your subjective opinion? One of them super cheaply made, plastic, the worst kind of metal, barely sharp at all, can only cut through like a banana barely with the peel off. And the other knife's super good and made in Germany and all super good steel and super sharp and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that one knife is better than the other?
I think that depends on what you're using the knife for.
I mean, wouldn't you say you could have a better? It would be better to use the worst knife for this purpose because it's going to beat up your knife, but still you'd acknowledge that the knife would be worse, and that would be the reason you'd be using it for that purpose.
I mean, I don't know. I get where you're coming from, but I don't know if I would inherently. I don't think the knife has an inherent bad quality. I mean, maybe it's bad relative to the other knife, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you there. Let's go there though. Let's say that we can't understand its goodness or badness except relative to some other object. But given that we have another object to compare it to, what does that vector tell us exists, if anything? What is that vector of analysis? What is the thing we're analyzing? What is the thing we're comparing?
What? What's being compared?
If I say this knife is better than that knife for all the normal reasons, one of them is a really good knife and one of them's a shitty knife. You know,
Oh,
like
okay.
this is a Spider Co. This is a kind of a medium expensive knife. It's like $60 for this knife. I got it as a gift, right? A Spider Co. They're cool knives. And then I also have some little shitty knife here. But let's say I had one that's the same size but was only like this one here, okay? So which is a good knife. This is a imitation Spider Co. Cheap Chinese thing. You know, just a couple bucks. It's not good at all. All the parts are plastic. This is all wobbly. It's loose. You know. What are we comparing?
The answer to the quality question of objects or their virtue is they have to be contextualized. Their utility has to be contextualized. Once you contextualize a purpose for an object or anything in the world, you can add a virtue to it because it's going to be either good or bad at achieving that purpose, that contextualized purpose. Can we establish that?
But I'm saying you can compare those two and say one's a good knife, one's a bad knife without knowing the specific context in which you're going to use it. If you want to choose one or the other, you're going to choose the good knife, not the bad one.
No, but you'll choose one in the context of what you're choosing the knife for.
You don't know what you're choosing it for. You get to choose a knife. Here you go. You don't think to myself, let's see, what are my likely uses? Frequency of uses in which a good knife would be preferable versus frequency of uses in which a bad knife would be preferable. We're still trying to dodge the question, what is this thing, good and bad, that we're comparing between the two?
We're I don't know, the quality of the knife, I guess. I don't know.
Equality,
You would have
right?
had to have used it before to know whether or not it was good or bad, right?
No, you don't have to. You could just hold these two. You can tell by just going like this, hold them and mess around with them. You can tell which one's better. You can feel it.
It's the only way we can meaningfully give an objective standard to an object or anything in the world is to have another vector there, something that can contextualize the purpose. Otherwise, it's just a subjective preference and ultimately doesn't mean anything.
But I'm telling you, we know possible likely uses for knives. But we do not.
If you name any of them, then you therefore contextualize this purpose and improve my
But
argument.
they're all conditional. They're all potential uses. None of them are actual uses. We haven't used either of these knives yet, and even if we know we're never going to use it, we'd rather have this one because we know it has a higher monetary value.
That's a use.
Okay, but we don't even know if we're going to sell it. Let's say you think, well, maybe someday my child will inherit it or something. It's just a $50 knife. Why, I mean, why would you even think those sort of things? You pick this one because it's a better knife. That's why you pick it. Not because you've surveyed your likely uses. That's what I'm saying. You don't know. If I'm saying, okay, right now I'm sitting here out in the wilderness with just 4 tools. One of the tools will be a knife. Choose one of these knives. Okay, well then obviously this knife is more useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, this knife is more useful in general because it's better. It's better at all things one does use knives for. The only possible thing this could be better for is for using it for a knife that you don't care about because you know it's going to ruin the knife. Or that this one would be better for maybe certain small things that the blade size is just the right amount smaller than this for to pry something up or whatever. I don't know. But as a general rule, this is always going to be the preferable knife to use simply because it's a better knife. It's got better metal. It's sturdier. It's not dorky.
But how did that prove inherent quality or inherent virtue?
Yeah, there's something not adding up.
Well, it doesn't prove it. It doesn't. In fact, I disagree with Zach's position. I just thought he could have been arguing it better.
You disagree with my position that everything is virtue?
I disagree with your
What was your
position that
position,
objects
Zach?
have virtue. I disagree with your position that objects have an essence or virtue or anything like that.
Yeah, they.
We're not
Yeah.
arguing that objects don't have virtue.
Having a virtue doesn't necessarily imply an essence. I'm just saying objects can be used good or bad for their contextualized purpose. There are objects that are going to be better at achieving their contextualized purpose than other objects.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, contextualized purpose, then yes.
Okay, but I think that it is possible to make a somewhat bolder claim than that, which is the claim that famous person Alex made in reference to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is to say that an understanding of the quality of the thing precedes conscious thinking about it. For most things, for most objects that we're familiar with anyway. And that there is a spiritual familiarity with something called quality that transcends its utility. That transcends its utility. That is resonant of the respect that the craftsman put into something as well. If you see something that's really well crafted, an object that's made out of wood or something that's made by somebody who knows good carpentry skills and stuff, well, the point is, you say the quality of something will always be subjective, but what exactly do you mean by that? Because we have a lot of distinctions between subjectivity, meaning like, I might say,
I'm saying, okay, wait. I just want to say one thing on the Caleb thing. They said quality will always be just subjective. I agree with that. That's the thing. Like, I think that the only way you can hold objective standards of quality to something is to contextualize its purpose. That's my claim.
I'd say a quality of something will always be objectively non-falsifiable, but nevertheless objectively and absolute true, according to a given standard that is that transcends people's consensus about it as well. Some people are wrong and some people are right.
Well, the objective, if there's no contextualized purpose, then making objective claims about it, if people disagree, there's going to be no obvious criterion there.
Right, it's not an argument you can win.
Jayson, I want the pretty knife.
You cut out. Can you repeat that, please?
I said I want the pretty knife.
You want the pretty knife? Yeah, I've got a lot of knives around here.
I want the vintage knife.
Well, my point is that there is quality beyond utility. For example, Jayson, look, you know that your picture is better than my picture, right? We all know that. Why? Because it is. Oh, but that's just subjective. We can all look at our fucking pictures side by side and we can see your picture is better than mine. It's obviously true. What we have here are people fighting against introverted intuition when you try to cling to aesthetic relativism. There are aesthetic truths. They are absolute. Just because they're non-falsifiable doesn't mean that it's any less true.
That is an interesting position. Because, like, okay, if you laid a picture of a stick man beside the Mona Lisa, you're gonna say the Mona Lisa is better, right? Like, that's not subjective. Like, I mean, I guess it is. You can argue it's subjective, but it's like it's so obviously true, right?
Well,
but I guess the question is, by what criterion do we hold those paintings too.
Well, that's where we get to the essence of a thing, right? That's what makes it really tempting to say that
Yeah, but
quality.
you disagree with my form.
I know, and that's why I'm getting to my hybrid mush. Okay, I've got a special hybrid mush prepared for you, Zachary. I know how you enjoy a warm bowl of hybrid mush, so I've prepared one. So anyway, my theory is that that it is a reality that's made manifest within individuals, but that it is somewhere between a space object and a time object. When realities of space objects are made manifest in people, they are impelled upon every other reality, such that all realities must manifest it. That's the nature of a space object. It requires energy to change rather than to persist, and such it must be recognized in each reality as it is made manifest. Normally, time objects are much less sticky than that, and they take a lot more energy to persist for a long time before they become sticky like that. However, there's a hybrid kind of time object, which is neither a time object nor a space object, neither subjective nor objective, and it's called quality. How do you like my warm bowl of hybrid mush?
So we have time object, we have space object, and
Are you
then we have
taking notes, Zach?
yeah. And we have the dialectical solution, which is quality, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, now
I have a feeling I'm gonna get torn apart here.
what are the semantics of time object?
Semantics of time object. That which requires energy to persist. That which is distinct and requires energy to persist.
Something that lasts through time.
And requires.
No, the thing is, it has duration too. The other thing is it has duration usually, but not always. So don't put that down. The always ones are the ones I said. It is distinct and it requires energy to persist. This video we're making right here is a time object. It also has duration, I should note, and almost all time objects, except for still images, do have duration. Even still images have a duration to look at them.
What's an example of a time object that isn't a video?
A song that could be a song that we all know and we know it exists, even though none of us are singing it or hearing it right now, would be Jingle Bells.
So can we assume that the only way to manifest a time object is to have a space object there as a catalyst?
No, we're all manifesting the song Jingle Bells right now. Think about it. Sing it in your head real quick. Don't sing it out loud. Let's all sing it in our heads. Okay, we're all manifesting this time object. There's no space object in place at all.
Would we be considered space objects?
We are time object producing space objects.
So therefore, the space object still has to be there to produce the time object, right?
Right, but the time object persists beyond the space object. So dead people's time objects still exist.
Okay, so space objects are like people, my microphone, my coffee cup.
People's bodies are space objects. Let me be clear about that distinction. Body is a space object, not the person themselves. They're a unique kind of thing called an agent, which is a time object making thing.
So, people are agents. A space object is that equivalent
Is
to
that which requires energy to change? So, like this thing, this metal thing. If I don't do anything to it, it just stays the same. But if I don't if I don't pay my internet bill and I stop having electricity and stuff like that, then I can no longer access these time objects at all. If my server company goes out of business and throws all the servers away, then I don't know what happens. I guess I just, they don't exist anymore. They gotta have electricity pumped into it to keep existing, or being printed on a space object like a book or sheet music.
Both are require energy to exist. One persists by energy. One requires energy to change. So one requires energy to change. One requires energy to persist. Right?
Correct.
Now the dialectical hybrid is quality. How would you define quality?
I'd say that quality is something that persists with with the attribute of a space object. In other words, that it has just that one attribute of space objects, but all the other attributes of time objects. But the attribute of space objects that it has occurs before conscious awareness, such as, like for example, babies. Babies won't go over a glass thing that looks like they're going to fall, even though they couldn't possibly know anything about that yet, right?
So quality is intuitive then.
Right. Quality is look, when we touch a rock and we say, oh, this rock is hard. It feels hard. It's not something I can squish. We are saying that this quality of the rock, the part of the distinction of this object is that nature, right? Is that thing we can expect when we go up and go like this, that this rock is going to be hard. It's not going to shatter underneath my fingers, and it's not going to be like a pillow, right? So we know that the thing is distinct, and that unless energy is put upon it to change it, it's going to continue to persist in the same form. Whereas with quality, it has that same quality, right? So it's the same nature of thing. That, like the hardness of the rock, we can expect it to retain its form unless energy is applied to it to change it. So if I'm a craftsman who's made a really good knife, the quality of the knife doesn't change unless I intentionally beat it up. And even then, you can still feel the quality of the original knife before it got all beat up, right? It really isn't impacted. You can tell, oh, that was once a really good knife. But it has none of the other aspects of time of a space object that we can share around one another to falsify with, right? We don't have the same space objecty frame of reference.
Time object can be manipulated until it becomes a different time object, a separate entity.
Repeat the question, please.
How much can a time object be altered until it becomes a separate entity, a separate time object?
A fascinating and important question. The answer for the purest of time objects, which is melody, is 0, not at all. But what you can have are variations on a song that are intentionally designed to reference the true form of the song in variant ways that are supposed to be appealing. But it always has its true form. So I might say, jingle bells, jingle all the way, and change the melody for a stylistic effect. But we all know I changed the melody. We all know that's not the real melody of Jingle Bells.
But then, can we say that, like in a song, for example, what we can judge as the highest quality of songs are those songs that engage the truest form of the time object?
Well, I think that a time object gains solidity through observation over time. So that its permanence, because its permanence is only ever actually attained through the experience of individual human beings, because it has duration, right? You can't hold a song like a rock because the song has duration. So I think that introverted intuition, that first of all, melodies are amorphous entities waiting to be formed into distinct entities by human agents. That they're discovered, more or less, by NI. That's how
what time objects are discovered?
Melodies, true melodies are discovered. They're not created. That's what I think. It's something Corey thinks, my INFJ friend, and I just believe it. It just feels so goddamn true to me. I don't know how any good melody I've ever come up with, I have no idea where it came from or how it got there. All the bad melodies I've ever come up with, I know exactly how they got there.
Well then, that means that that's directly in conflict then with your idea of only reality is created when we observe it, and here's why. You are under the position that the melody exists until it's discovered, and once it is uncovered, and it is now established as a time object.
You skipped my prepositional phrase, in an amorphous form.
In amorphous form?
in an amorphous form. Now, you're right to point out that how can it exist at all if its distinction is necessary for it to exist as a time object in reality? And my position is that's the job of the agent time object creator, is to make that conundrum, to bridge that conundrum somehow. I don't know exactly the mechanics of it. I understand there's a contradiction in here, and I think though my point is it's no more or less contradictory than the alternative, and it's less and it's much. Look, it's about inductive versus deductive. This is not deductively sound what I'm doing, but it's inductively sound because we can see from the evidence. We know a good song from a bad song. We may not agree on a lot of specifics, but we all know when something's really shitty and nobody wants to listen to it, right?
Yeah, especially you. So would you differentiate the agent and the space object, right? So we are agents, I guess, but we occupy space object forms. Is that how you would distinguish, or is that how you would define a human being?
I would say, yeah, and I'd say that we speak in two languages. We speak in either the auditory or visual language of the feelings, which is realized as either melody or visual arts, and we speak in the auditory or visual language of the thinking, which is either introverted thinking, kind of this shit that we're doing, or extroverted thinking, stuff that Kunkel does. Basically, there's four languages, you know? There's two languages, one of feeling, one of thought. And the great thing about music is it combines the two like nothing else does. Melody is pure feeling, and the words are pure thought, but if you do them properly and you let introverted intuition direct those for the most part instead of forcing shit. That's what makes shit fail. Forcing shit. Forcing shit's bad.
What is TI and TE in regards to the language? How do they are they? Would
TI's
you
the
is
auditory. TI's auditory thinking. TE's visual thinking. And I
okay?
think
And FE's visual as well.
FE is visual, yes, and FI is auditory, right?
Okay.
And that's why, because FE is in the third slot for me, it's why it gives me I have a lot of conflicts over it because I value it, but I actually am very non-visual. Like Candace would always say, "Didn't you catch her reaction to that? She was not happy about that." I was like, "No, I didn't. She seemed fine to me." Did you look at her facial expression? No. Why would I do that?
Caleb's question: sound wave space objects. What would your response to that be?
Are sound waves space objects? No. Sound waves are frequencies. Um, frequencies are forms of agency. There are agents that are non-sentient agents. Okay, like wind and the light. I mean, heat coming from the sun, shit like that, right? The waves in the ocean from the moon. Those non-sentient agents are energy forces, energy vectors, energy moving along vectors. That's all that is. Energy moving along vectors. The thing that causes reality to be meaningful in a sense is that there's an agent time object creator that allows not just energy to be sent along space object vectors, but along time object vectors as well. And the confluence of those two things is basically our life experience, you know, so that we don't just live the drum solo in our head. We actually get to hit on these objects that make those sounds. You know, it's cool.
So I don't know. I don't. I know you. I think you answered this, but I forgot what your answer was. So I'm gonna ask again. Um, if a if the pure time object is melody, then can we judge a song's worth based on how representative it is of the purest form?
Well,
Once they align, once
I
the catalyst by which the time object is manifested through, if that catalyst is completely in alignment with the purest time, is that what quality?
well, I think if we were to compare the quality of songs purely, then we would have a very simple beat that is the right beat for that melody, and then just that melody played with sine waves for all songs. Like instead of allowing differences in production value and stuff like that, and differences in production attentiveness and differences in style of production and stuff like that, to have such a huge impact on what people listen to, which is understandable because that has its own quality vector that it's acting on as well, you know. But if you were to take a song and just play them all as sine waves, like, you know, let's hear everybody's new songs, gather a bunch of new songwriters' songs together, and let's play them this way, all the same way, with like a simple beat that's supposed to go with that, the intuitively right beat, and then the melody is played do 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 do, and any harmonies would be the same thing over the top of it.
Things to consider then in comparing quality of songs are time, form / structure. What else could we say?
Well, I mean, I think the production value is really important as well. Duration is important. Narrative is important. The thing is, we do incorporate our thinking into it, and we do bring those words into play. And our thinking is an excellent way to access our feelings. That's why, for me, I often don't feel things until I say the sentence that expresses what the feeling would be like if I were to feel it naturally. And, like, you know, oh, she abandoned me when I needed her most. It took a while to find that sentence. Once I found it, then I felt really sad, right?
Okay, think of it this way. Okay, if let's have a basic ass melody. So let's do, 4 chords. Okay, G, E, E minor, and C. Okay, that's a pretty popular progression, right? Now, if the time between we played those chords was an hour between each chord, we're not going to say that's a good song, right?
Correct.
Right? So what that implies is that a quality of a song, like that doesn't direct support of your argument that time and duration and form and structure are important to completely manifest the purest form of a song. So what that implies is that there is some sort of, like, the melody. It seems what you're saying is that melody is the purest time object.
Look, when it's right, let me explain. When it's right, it goes like this. In an ideal world, the melody either comes by itself or it comes concurrently with the lyrics, rather than having it be driven at all by the lyrics, in my mind. But then the lyrics come into play. Now, once those come into play, those can be altered a little bit here and there, and I tend to make them alter because it gets closer and closer to what they're supposed to be. The melody implies certain mood things and all sorts of stuff, right? And you can really feel it when it starts to land where it's supposed to be. And then the tempo is determined by, after that, you go, oh, well, this is about how fast it's supposed to be. And eventually start playing around the same speed all the time. You go, okay, that's the tempo. And now I got it. And again, it's introverted intuition the whole time. I'm not good at using it consciously, so I have to wait around until I go, oh, there it is. I have to try a bunch of shit. I got to do any stuff until it goes, oh, there it is. That's the right tempo. But I always know clearly that it is if it is the right tempo, you know? All these different components fall into place. Also, in production stuff, I'm working on a song and I'm thinking, okay, this is where the ear starts to get bored. I need to change it up somehow. And so maybe I'll throw in a little whistle part there. Get some weird instrumentation like that. And then it's something new for the ear to cling on to. But then in other songs, like an solo acoustic song, it has its own aesthetic, and maybe it just wants to be solo acoustic, or maybe it just wants one voice with a little bit of harmony over it or something. Like my friend Al Areno, he was really excited. He was happy about the way that this little jam song we made in Sugarloaf came out. It's called, Going to the Loaf Up Mountain. And he's like, oh, we should, and he suggested some project stuff with it. Like, let's put drums under it, let's do blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, well, actually, I think that thing is right as it is right there. That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be us two sitting there underneath the fucking trees and you on that electric guitar, so you're a little bit lower in the mix, and me playing like that, and it's supposed to be like that, and it's rad that way. And it probably won't be as good no matter how else we produce it. I could be wrong.
So NI isn't a language then. What would you classify NI and NE as, and SE and SI?
What would I classify them as?
Yeah, if TI, FI, TE, and FE are languages, what would you? Are they languages by which?
What I mean is they're the communicative means.
Yeah.
they oversee the communicative means of those two things. They're how we access our feelings with our thoughts and how we access our thoughts with our feelings.
I think
Communicative.
the perceiving I
Go
think
on.
the perceiving functions link content, and the judging functions is forms the content into words.
Well put. Well said. I agree. I like that. Who said that? I don't catch this name. Let me see.
Not really a
JC.
right?
Oh, JC. Cool. Oh, Zachary's gone to pause. Anyway, anyone want to attack my my aesthetic absolutism? I'm ready to pow pow.
Okay, I guess is a slight attacking. The
Good.
problem, the only problem I can see is that the objective standard we can hold stuff to. It seems to be kind of the closer you get to the purest form is where people start disagreeing, right? Because everyone's going to agree that if you play 4 chords, fucking with an hour between each chord, everyone's pretty much going to agree like, okay, that's not a fucking song. That's nowhere near the purest form of that song. But when you start getting closer to the actual purest form, that's where the disagreements come. Do you think certain people are inclined to identify the purest form more so than others? And I'll be right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have to be practiced at doing it, though. And they have to be practiced thinking about it in this fashion, knowing that sometimes, that you have to be practiced you have to get practiced with this. Writing a song that you're excited about and then over time realizing what's wrong with it. You have to be practiced doing that a lot of times and get used to your own tendencies to be biased in certain ways and not ways. And what I find is that the correct interpretation, the more people listen to a song, the more they become convinced of the correct interpretation of it, and the closer you get to consensus. It's that people start throwing opinions about long before they have any business throwing opinions about it, especially about music. In my opinion, most people don't know shit about it, except they know what the natural truth their ears are telling them. Call Me Maybe's a rad song, I want to listen to it again. That's the truth. That's the extent to which they understand the truth, right? When they start quibbling about opinions about this and that, they're just talking out their ass 90% of the time, which is fine. People are welcome to talk out of their ass. I do it almost constantly. I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. I've been host Eric. Host Zachary and I have been having an interesting conversation about this with chiming in from JC, and famous person Nande is also in attendance. Famous person Jayson Neff putting up ESTP dismissal of our unnecessarily wordy nonsense in the chats periodically. Famous person Lorenz throwing down some nihilism here and there. And famous person Callum asking relevant questions. And let's see what else happened here. That's about it, I think. Okay, so thanks for watching.